Hey everybody, welcome back. We've got a very exciting episode today where we're going to be talking about Amazon. They sell 50% of every e-commerce dollar on the internet. They are huge, they're massive, they're the behemoth that even if you're not on there, you have to be aware of. I'm joined by Tyler Algair from Pita Logistics. He's the founder and CEO. Tyler, thanks for being here.
Of course, thanks for having me. Excited to talk about our dear friends at Amazon.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a love or hate relationship. I think some people, it probably depends on the time of year. I think we're recording this just before Black Friday, and I think a lot of people are looking forward to it. But maybe after Black Friday, when FBA hasn't loaded, they're going to be cursing them a little bit. But what do you think? Is it a
Yeah,
love
it, dep-
relationship?
it is both. If you are a customer, you probably love them more. If you're a seller, you probably hate them more. And lucky for Pitted, we get to straddle both sides, so we love and hate them all times of the year.
Yeah, I don't know if you've done the same thing, but with Chase at the end of the year, they'll give you like a spending summary, and they'll just show
Oh
you,
gosh,
hey, here's where you spent your money. And I remember like last couple years, I look at it, and I don't look at it anymore because it is embarrassing how much of my disposable income goes to Amazon. It is,
yeah.
it's crazy, but yeah. Are you the same way?
I Yes, we are the same way. It's actually really funny. I was never really a big Amazon shopper until probably about 3 years into one of our sister companies, Pitted Labs, and now all I do is live, breathe. I rarely go to the store. If I in my bathroom, like, oh, I need more paper towels. I could drive 5 minutes to Target, or I could just be like, oh, I'll wait till tomorrow to get it. I don't need it that bad.
Yes, it
I
is. The convenience is amazing. Well,
it is.
let's kind of start by doing a little bit of a history lesson. I'd love for you to walk us through the history of FBA. What were the early days like, and how has it evolved to be what it is today?
Yeah. So full disclosure, I was but a wee lad when FBA rolled out, so I was not there for those early dinosaur days of ecom. But FBA rolled out, I believe, in 2006, in the classic like Amazon, like we're doing everything for the customer first. So here's this new program. Very basic. Amazon, the whole thing would just send us your stuff and we'll ship it out. Not really any different from a traditional 3PL. Um, Obviously, and we'll talk about this a ton on the rest of this, but it is much more than a simple warehouse. They've got locations in every single state, shipping millions of boxes a day. It's robots. It's one of the most, if not the most impressive fulfillment operation on the planet.
Yeah, I remember when we were living in Charlotte, they announced it about a year ago that they were now going to do public tours with Amazon, amazontours.com, if anybody's curious. And I signed up and I went as soon as I could. I took a time off of work and just went there. And I was like a kid in the candy store. They had 20,000 people at this mostly mechanized warehouse. And you just think about that, like how many more people would they have needed had they not had all the automation there? It's just mind boggling.
Yeah. Yeah, they have those the floors with the robots, everything dark. You have to wear the special vest so you don't get run over. It incredibly impressive operations.
Yeah. So, I kind of have this thesis that with with Amazon rolling out FBA and that now they're pushing multi-channel fulfillment and AWD and all these things that are coming out, that they kind of have this aim to own every single pick fulfillment operation out there, right? Like if you're shipping a single item to a customer, they're making it such that just have Amazon do it. Do you see a similar trend? Is that kind of their playbook?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Amazon's mission is to be the most customer-centric company on the planet. Depending on who you are, what you do, and whatever. Some people say, well, this is incredibly monopolistic. You look at Amazon brands, for example, like they're competing. They have all this data around what Duracell and Energizer do, and then all of a sudden they have Amazon brand batteries. They do it under the premise of we're just doing this to give customers better pricing, high quality products. You think about the on the advertising and marketing side, they own Twitch. They have Amazon TV, obviously. They now have NFL contracts, but all this leads into their advertising platform. So they own that whole customer journey. They tried buying Roomba or iRobot. Some people say it so they could see the entirety of your house so they can have more information. But that's creepy or smart or whatever, Amazon's MO is affecting every part of our lives, call it monopolistic, whatever. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they're doing the same thing on the supply chain side, where it was like, hey, we have a fulfillment center, just send us your stuff, we'll flip it for you, to the second it leaves your factory in China, we want to have it. We want to do all the shipment, we want to do everything to the point it gets to the customer, including their own delivery services. They're not making friends with FedEx. That's for sure. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. It's totally their playbook.
Yeah. And I guess to that extent, how do they get from we're just a warehouse shipping our own stuff out to now we are the fulfillment partner of choice for hundreds of thousands of sellers?
The Prime badge is what did it. Um, Barring, some other thing like self-fulfilled Prime. Generally speaking, if you want to have the Prime badge on Amazon, which I can tell you from the marketing and advertising side, if you don't have it, you will not win on Amazon. So they said, oh, cool. Like if you use Amazon FBA, you will automatically get the Prime badge. We all know that it's not always 2-day shipping, but the Prime badge is what gets it.
Hmm.
So they have these not requirements per se to use FBA. They're like, of course, ship from your own facility, no problem, but you're not going to get the badge and you're not going to get the sales. So they almost make this environment of you have to use us if you want to win. Same thing with Amazon advertising. If you want to win on Amazon, of course, please, we're not forcing you to use our ad platform, but if you don't, you're not going to make money and you're not going to win. So the Prime badge, in my opinion, and I will also say the simplicity of, especially as they've scaled, the simplicity of using it, you just slap it in. There's no scalability issues at all when you use FBA. So I would say those are the two biggest things.
Got it. And so how has FBA changed over the years? I mean, they I'd love to get your take on what impact they've had on the way that sellers approach inventory and fulfillment in this ecosystem.
Yeah, it's been a double-edged sword. Like I mentioned, the simplicity of it, the ease of the low barrier to entry is really great for a lot of their third-party sellers. Um, they have made it more complicated over the years. Like I remember when we first started Pitted Logistics, was in 2020. Great time to start fulfillment with everything going on. But one of the biggest things that we had to help our clients with at the beginning was they just blocked the inbound of non-essential goods. So they have a lot of control over basically people's livelihoods, especially for smaller brands and even big brands where they just hit with these relatively unseen changes. But anyway, so they've got these things. They start putting in inventory placement fees to help encourage. Again, I'll use that Amazon strategy. Encourage people to split locations where they send it to instead of one point. Um, they've gone up the funnel with global logistics and Amazon warehousing and distribution to make it easier for you to, instead of just using Amazon for the last bit of delivery and having a 3PL to hold your bulk storage, they now have this warehousing and delivery, which is palletized storage instead of just individual units. Um, it's become a lot more complex, but the double-edged sword is how easy it is to get into it. A lot of sellers don't think about, Amazon doesn't necessarily advertise some of the back end components you need to be effective with it. Things in terms of inventory reconciliation softwares. Amazon will always lose your inventory. So what are you doing to make sure that you're getting reimbursed for that? How are you tracking? Do you have Nexus in a state? Just because you sent it to an FC in Dallas doesn't mean it's only staying in Dallas. It will get distributed all across the country. Sellers may not know that you now have a tax implication in all 50 states now because you have inventory sitting in other places. So it's, anyway, ranting, but those are two of the big things that I've seen.
Yeah, it is interesting because logistics is inherently simple and complicated at the same time. I mean, on the one hand,
Yes.
it's like all you have to do is put a label on this and ship it out. Like it's not that
Yep.
hard. I mean, how many times have you talked with a CEO or a company and they're like, "Oh, well, just ship the boxes out. That's all you got to do, right?" And yes,
Yes.
that is true. That is the factor. But then you think about all of those other things that go into it: the staffing, the planning, the equipment. Which parcel carrier do you choose? And then you get into the financial aspects of inventory and Nexus. And it's almost a bit of a misnomer that FBA makes things easier. It makes it easier to sell on Amazon, but it certainly opens you up to all of this other expertise that you need to have or to partner
Yep.
with. And so I imagine that's where you guys come in to some extent.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will always be fans of Amazon and FBA. Like I said earlier, love and hate them. They're an incredible asset to have. You need to use it if you want to win on Amazon. But yeah, they certainly have their quirks and features.
Yeah. I think one of the areas that I hear most people struggle with, and you think this would be the most transparent piece, is understanding the economics of FBA. Because there are the core FBA fees, but then there's all this other stuff that kind of gets layered in or lumped into that. When you're talking to a brand, how do you think about what aspects they need to be accounting for when they're building their profitability metrics on Amazon?
Yeah. Um, we at Pivot, we think of ourselves as less Amazon consultants or a fulfillment center, but more small business and business consultants, because Amazon is a microcosm of a much larger business. You have all the same requirements. You have legal implications, financial, accounting, inventory, marketing, all on the same platform. So when we work with brands, yes, of course, they have the standard FBA fees for what it costs to pick and pack and ship. But what we do with our brands is we'll build a mock P&L of their Amazon business, and we'll say, okay, well, cool. Here's how your FBA fits into your unit economics, but how are you shipping it to FBA? If you're not using all the other Amazon warehousing and distribution or global logistics, it's okay. Well, what does it cost to ship 5 pallets a month or whatever to an Amazon distribution center? That needs to go into your analytics. Are you using Amazon partner carriers? Are you using your own negotiated rates? Even before then, how are you shipping it if you manufacture overseas? How are you shipping to the US? Are you using Amazon Global Logistics to possibly save some money there? Or do you have a multi-channel fulfillment operation where you need to use a 3PL partner before it gets to Amazon? And even after that, returns management, this whole re-commerce world of brands have all this returned inventory or things that are so slightly damaged that it can't be perfect and new, but how do we get money out of that? Having mechanisms in place and financially modeling that out saves brands a ton of money. So that's what we do with brands. We'll typically look at unit economics for your FBA fees, but there's all these other things before and after that you need to be aware that can quickly erode margin if you're not careful and complete you in a loss situation if you don't know about it.
Yeah. Do you find that most people make as much money as they expect they're going to make on Amazon?
It depends on how naive or pessimistic they are going into it. If they're pessimistic, no, they're probably making as much as they expected. Um, but no, I mean, Amazon, they're pay to play space, their fees. I will say, just anecdotally, I will say that Amazon takes, if you're a third party seller on Amazon, roughly 50% of your top line revenue between FBA fees and marketing and promotions and other fluff. That's just Amazon's fees. So you need to have 50% margin going into Amazon
Wow. Just to break even.
just to break even. That obviously, that's a very
Yeah.
generalized statement, but that's typically what I've seen. And Amazon, they are a for-profit business. So
Yeah, so let's kind of dive on that a little bit because I know that there's been a lot of talk about Temu and Temu coming after Amazon. Amazon has recently started basically a Temu competitor where you're sourcing directly from China and doing that.
yep.
What is the impact that you've seen Temu have on Amazon in general?
Oh gosh. I would almost say it's the opposite. What impact has Amazon had on Temu? I would say Amazon showed Temu what is possible. Everybody's familiar with going on Amazon and seeing these all capitalized, no name brands that are just dupes of whatever. Um, we all generally know those are just Amazon factor or Chinese factories flipping stuff up, popping on Amazon. I would say that because it has worked so well, it's fueled the ability for Temu to work. There's all this, especially on like, the TikTok type crowd, like let's find these dupes, let's look for things that are just as high quality. Shoppers are becoming a lot more intelligent than they were 10, 15 years ago, where it's, oh, I only buy this name brand because it's high quality. People are now becoming more global in how they understand how businesses work. It's like, oh, like Lululemon makes their same stuff in the same factory as insert whatever random brand you find on Amazon. So there's entire TikTok accounts around like go buy this thing on Amazon. It's literally the exact same as Lulu.
Right.
So I would say it's customers. It was proven on Amazon that it can work really well. Temu can now be a platform where they just make it as cheap as possible, almost kind of what Jet.com reminded me of before Walmart took it over and really ruined it. But that's another conversation.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. It is impossible to overstate the impact that Amazon has had on e-commerce and just the trajectory, because there's almost like two worlds of e-commerce. There is the D2C world where people are working with 3PLs and brands and those, and then there's this whole other echelon, which is Amazon. And they're almost separate worlds to some extent. You've got different providers, cost structures, mechanics, those sorts of things. And a lot of good brands will play in both worlds. And you think about the value of Amazon being able to have a place that consolidated 50% of the internet traffic around search for specific products. They allowed these factories to start to build and gain this density, which, like you said, it laid the foundation for a Shein or a Temu to tap into those same factories and just look at saying, all right, what happens if we are okay losing a bunch of money and we don't charge 15% and we just want to go out and steal market share? And so I guess the question I have for you is, now that Temu has started to open facilities or warehouses in Mexico, they're talking about doing the same thing in the US. Do you think that Temu looks more like Amazon in 10 years, or does Amazon look more like Temu in 10 years?
I would say honestly, I think they play in separate lanes.
Okay.
I would say the core Amazon as we know it will stay in this. They're not going to go full Temu, full Wish. That's not where they want to be. I think that will go against a lot of their core mission fundamentals, which is providing the best customer experience. Amazon knows that there's cheap counterfeits there. I mean, we can talk about counterfeits later. So I think Amazon will stay in this kind of mid-price tier, access to as much as you can, high quality stuff, low quality stuff, everything in between. However, you have seen, and we just talked about this, they launched Haul, which is their version of Temu. That is so new. I really don't have a whole lot to say about that right now, but I think core Amazon will stay in their lane. But this Haul component that they launched, that will be a direct competitor to Temu. I also don't think Temu is going to try and step on Amazon's core turf. I think Temu wants to stay in this more value price lane. They might try and go up a little bit. Um, Maybe I'm naive. I don't know. But if I had to put my money on Temu or Amazon's growth in the next 10 years, I'd probably stick it on Amazon.
Interesting. And is part of that because they have all of the other non-commerce profit centers with AWS and advertising and all that?
Yes. Yeah, it is more than we realize. And even today, I find myself surprised by, oh, I didn't realize this was an Amazon thing, or this part of my life is impacted or driven by Amazon. It's brilliant. They have a very wide net over the US consumer, especially that's a deep moat to overcome.
Yeah, I remember when they first launched advertising, it was very quietly done, and it was like overnight $1 billion business, and it was just like, oh,
Yes.
that's nice, that's a nice beat, you
Well,
know.
and that's what I was saying earlier. It's one of those like, oh, we don't need you to use it, but like if if you want to make any money or be even quasi successful, you have to use Amazon advertising.
It's a nice buy button you have here. It'd be a shame if you were to lose that.
Yeah, shoot. Well, it's not a requirement, but up to you. Up to you.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think we could talk a lot about kind of this playoff between Temu and Amazon, and I think I agree with you. I think Amazon's probably still going to be the one that's going to come out on top, simply because Temu isn't profitable yet, and there's really,
Hmm.
I think the interesting part is we did a deep dive podcast on e-commerce and tap earlier this year, and we profiled Temu and went deep into that. And one of the things that stuck out to me was that they are stealing share not from Amazon but from Dollar General,
Interesting.
and it was something like in 2022, Dollar General had a 63-64% market share in the value channel, and a year later in 2023, they had like 42%. And so all of that volume moved over because you think about this, and they're selling to the same consumer, people that are extremely price sensitive, uh, and they're typically selling about the same goods. I mean, Dollar General is stocked with things that come from China, but the difference is, you don't have overhead of employees or retail space, and then because they're 3-2-1ing everything over, you don't have those tariffs as well. So they have an unfair value advantage against the value channel, which is why
Yep.
this massive shift over. So uh,
Interesting. And yeah, I think the acceleration of e-commerce, especially since COVID, like I made this a bit of a rabbit hole. COVID, I saw consumer behavior shift dramatically. We all did. But the general older demographic that would never shop online was forced to. The younger demographic, especially with TikTok and Temu and Wish, has also this relatively narrow band of internet savvy shoppers just exploded. And so on the, like you're saying, the price sensitive consumers, and because of scaling over the past years, shipping costs have gotten lower. So it makes Temu and Wish and these platforms a lot easier, where a $5 shipping fee may not have been something that somebody who would have shopped at Dollar General would have been willing to pay. But now costs are getting so low because of scale and everything accelerating since COVID. That makes total sense to me. It's very fascinating. 20% drop.
Yeah, thereabouts. It was meaningful from that end. You
Yeah.
know, we're just taking all the different left turns here. This is fun. But Amazon is obviously a massive competitor in the U.S. and it's Amazon versus Walmart, kind of all day every day is the battle that's playing there. But Amazon actually isn't that big outside of the U.S. and
Uh-huh.
they're still growing in Europe for crying out loud. They're making inroads into Africa. And there's a lot of places, including China, where it just isn't a factor. How do you make heads or tails of that? You think that something was so successful here would just be able to rinse and repeat? What is it about the U.S. market that allows Amazon to thrive and not do as well as they're doing elsewhere?
Oh gosh. I think if I knew that answer perfectly, I would probably go launch another Amazon in Europe. Uh, so let me just say that. Um, the consumer in the U.S. is very different, and also like let's just look at statistics. Like there are statistically there's a lot more people in the U.S. A lot of There's a lot more discretionary income in the U.S. relative to the rest of the world, generally speaking. We also are, it's in our culture. We are consumers like you would not believe. Well, you would believe that, but like generally speaking, we consume like nothing else. Amazon has built, and we're talking like the shopping Amazon, not the entire Amazon ecosystem. Amazon has built a really great platform that addresses the consumer behavior in all Americans, which is buy now. I think that is probably one of the biggest things. It's also a very business friendly country. To pop up warehouses, this will not be a political conversation, but it's a very business friendly country. There's a lot of restrictions in Europe. You've got EU, which helps a little bit, but the UK obviously left it. Um, there's a lot more red tape to move things around, and the consumer shopping behavior is just different. So that's a quick hot take. There's obviously a lot more things in there, and I'm sure listeners will have a lot of other opinions, but it is this is the place for quick, impulsive shopping on the internet, and Amazon does that super well.
Yeah, I agree with most of it. I think where I would challenge back a little bit is you look at places like Korea or even China, and you're getting drone delivery, which is something that the regulations in the US haven't allowed yet. And so there are some places where the internet is just 10 years ahead. And it's in this, I mean, look at storage lockers. Those are a relatively new thing. They've been in Europe for 15 years. And so
It's
there's
true.
places that are there that are there. But I think part of the challenge too is probably that Amazon is a uniquely American e-commerce perspective, right? You think about in Mexico, people don't put their credit card online, right? It is very common for you to have it basically delivered to their version of 7-Eleven. You go in, you pay cash, and you get your item, but you don't have stuff delivered to your house. In Ireland, they don't have house numbers for the most part, and so in Italy, it's you've got to be kind of home, and you've got to in Germany you leave packages with your neighbor, and so there's a lot of things that are just different inherently American that I think they've leaned in and done well. And to your point, largest economy in the world, great place to start, great place to own and win. But I guess this all comes to is: do you think that the American version of e-commerce, which is predicated on Amazon and the impact of Amazon, do you think that there's a limit to that? Will the rest of the world pick that up, or do you think that there will be different versions of the internet, so to speak?
Yeah, I think, and I like those challenges. I agree with those. By the way, I will say I am no expert in Asian e-commerce. However, I have an uncle who lives there. He's been there for, you know, 10 plus years. A very American person. I will just leave it that way. And I went to visit him last year, and it was really fascinating. We were actually talking about this. Um, so maybe it's a bifurcation between Western and Eastern cultures. But when his girlfriend, he's like, oh, she just buys stuff online all the time, like daily, like two or three orders coming to their apartment. But when we were talking about one thing he called that was very interesting is if you just look at the website for at least their Chinese shopping sites, the marketing, the visuals, how they communicate deals, just the whole structure of the website is very different from anything I've seen in Western e-commerce, which is very clean. And this is obviously subjective, but more like Americanized, clean, um, visually like organized. With what I saw in some of these Chinese sites is a lot more exciting, a lot more in your face. Think more like anime type things. And so I think it's just cultural differences. I mean, unless we do some kind of great West take over the East or East take over the West, whatever, I think we're going to have very bifurcated shopping experiences based off of culture alone and what people are used to seeing in their other, social intake, social media, TV, movies, whatever it is. I think that drives the shopping experience.
I think that's a lot of sense. And you kind of see live selling as a great example where that is huge. They have these live selling warehouses in China where
Yeah.
there's hundreds of people that are just, in front of a camera hawking something that goes. And I know Amazon has dabbled in that a little bit, but it hasn't really caught on to the same extent that it has in China.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen the same thing. Amazon Live's been around for a little bit. We haven't seen a ton of crazy success with it. For I would say the majority of brands on Amazon, the 80%. Big brands, obviously, with big production budgets, big following, that kind of stuff works generally well. But yeah, you're right. Like you see hundreds of cell phones lined up in front of these the Asian influencers selling whatever it is. And anyway, yeah, that's big difference.
It always reminds me of like an episode of Black Mirror or something. Like
Oh my
I
gosh.
can imagine being in a warehouse and being on there just
There,
to sell something.
there's a lot of, I think, a lot of truth that will come from Black Mirror episodes in the future, unfortunately.
Right. Um, I would love to kind of steer back to FBA prep a little bit, and I know this is a term that's thrown about quite a bit. And if I know nothing about Amazon, and Amazon says, "All right, ship me some stuff," what's so hard about this? Don't I just put a label on it and send it, and there I go?
Yes, that is it. Actually,
Oh,
we
okay.
don't advise doing anything else. No, it's oh, where to start? Let's go the simple FBA route. So, Pitted Logistics, we're a 3PL. We receive product from the manufacturer into our facility. So let's just say a brand, we do value add services like kitting or prep. Amazon, in order to be at the scale they are and fulfill with the expectations that they've given their customers, sometimes same day, next day, or 2 days, the average, they have to have incredibly specific regimented requirements before for products that arrive at their facility. So yes, to the layman, it's yeah, just put a label on it, send it in. But you have to think about what does that label do? It's not enough to just slap a label and hope it scans. Like there are specific scannability requirements. Um, don't use certain kinds of printers, inkjet versus thermal print labels. How long will it be readable? Because if you use a thermal label, it can get belt burned and rub off the actual black ink that's on there. So you have to think about the like how long is it going to be here? Are you going to bundle it? Are you going to do SIOC, which stands for ships in own container? Or are you going to have it overpackaged by Amazon? All of these things, Amazon, they have help guides about it, but it's certainly not advertised before you start. It's designed to be a low barrier entry product where you think, yeah, I'm just going to slap my label and say, but what will happen is if you do these things wrong or even slightly incorrect, you're going to hurt, you're going to possibly stock out, you're going to have inventory stuck in reserve, you're going to lose it, it's going to be rejected, you're going to have to do removal or disposal orders, very quickly possibly putting you into a break even or loss situation if you're not careful.
Gotcha. And so walk me through it. If you and I start an Amazon store today, and we're going to sell, I don't know, mugs or something. What do I have to do before I even like? Obviously, I have a Amazon seller account, and like, yay, they say you can sell your stuff. But what do I have to do from letting them know that an order is on its way to prepping it before it gets picked up to confirming that it's been received and is where it needs to be?
Yeah. So the typical flow is you'll get you get your mugs from your factory. Amazon does not care about your mug specifically. It's going to be thrown around all over the place, conveyors for miles, robots, people, everything in between. Um, so you're going to need to prep this product at a 3PL or at a facility that can do this. If it's not done from the factory, you'll make sure it's packaged appropriately so it doesn't break. if there's no scannable barcode on the packaging itself already, you'll need to put a scannable barcode, either a UPC or what we call an FN SKU, a fulfillment network stock keeping unit, which is an Amazon barcode. Amazon has to be able to scan something and track the inventory. So you prep the product with packaging. You want to make sure that the sellable unit, which is the mug likely in some kind of package, is durable enough that it can be tossed around a fulfillment center in a box, stored in totes, whatever. Put a label on it, ship it into Amazon. So Amazon makes it relatively easy with their send to Amazon workflow. If you're doing LTL or palletized shipments, you just put on a pallet, you label each carton, you label the pallet. You can use Amazon partner carriers that make it super easy. They'll come pick it up. It'll get shipped to an Amazon DC or split up. From there, you just make sure that Amazon actually receives it. You make sure there's no alerts or issues. Depending on the time of year, it can be received the same day it's actually delivered, up to several months, I've seen. But the big thing I'm trying to emphasize here is the prep at the facility before it gets to Amazon is really where you have to be careful. Um, for us specifically at Pitted Logistics, we have been doing the e-commerce stuff since we've started. Even before we had the fulfillment center, we were consulting other 3PLs. My recommendation, and I don't know if this is part of your question, but you need to have a SME or a subject matter expert at the facility who knows these requirements. It's not enough, I have found, for somebody to teach the warehouse from afar and just hope they remember. But for a SME to be at the warehouse that does a final QC on both the kitting, the prep, but also the actual final palletization of these products. Because if you don't have somebody who knows all the requirements and staying on top of changes, Amazon moves like that. So you need to make sure you have somebody that's doing the final QC, because once it leaves your dock and you're using an Amazon partner carrier, that's it. You're done touching that stuff until it's sent to the customer.
From your perspective, when it looks at the routing guides for Amazon versus the routing guides for a Walmart, Target, Sephora, Nordstrom, how is there a difference in the complexity of the routing guides or the frequency that the routing guides change?
Yes. From what I have seen, there is no single routing guide for Amazon, which makes it so complex, and why we always advocate for using a company like Pitted Logistics who knows this, or a company or 3PL that knows e-commerce, doesn't simply just add it to their service offering because they need to, but truly knows it. Because there's not a single PDF you print out. You have to understand, if you're doing value add services like kitting or labeling or polybagging, you have to be aware of the changes, the requirements there. That's part of the routing guide, but that's multiple web pages on Amazon's support platform. Then you have the carton labeling requirements. They may change depending on the type of product where you're sending it to. Palletization guides, generally don't really change, but you have to know those are specific to Amazon. They also have been making a lot of changes this year into how you ship to Amazon. It used to be, hey, I want to send in 1,000 units of SKUs A, B, C, and D. Cool, that's 4,000 total units. Just palletize it all, just send it to this one place in Dallas, Texas. Amazon is becoming, I'll just say it, a lot more difficult to work with in that regard. Is now saying, cool, you have 4 SKUs, 4,000 units. I actually want you to take 200 of SKU A and 100 SKU B, send them to this place in Phoenix. And then I want you to send this many and this many to this SKU. So you have to, maybe what would have been a 5-pallet order is now a 15-pallet order. So anyway, you have to be very conscious of all of these steps along the way. And there's no single routing guide, which makes it that much more difficult to know how all of these different components of Amazon inventory prep feeds into a pallet going out the door.
Yeah, I can see how that can pile up for someone who's got a store in their garage and is trying to do it for the first time. And that change where they're basically having you pre-position that's basically then just externalizing some of that cost and making their machine more efficient by not having to receive a bunch of stuff and move it through their network. Is that right?
Yep, exactly. That's been their model. Distributed inventories for as long as I've known it, shipped to a place, and then on their dime, they will distribute the inventory to be able to hit those shipping SLAs that Amazon customers expect. But Amazon's getting wise, and they're realizing they're losing a lot of money by doing that. So they are saying, hey, seller, you can either pay extra money, which are called these inventory placement fees. I think cost from like a dozen cents or so on the low end to several dollars for big items. To send, you can pay all that money to ship it to one place. We'll make it easy for you. Wink, wink, not really. Obviously, then they're recouping their costs. So then they'll say, okay, well, you don't want to pay that money. Okay, well, what would have been one shipment with 5 pallets easily, nice, cleanly split up? We're going to have you send it to 7. But you save money. But what ends up happening, and we tell our brands, and we help be very careful with this, is as a 3PL, we now have to do a ton more work. What was 5 pallets of inventory now maybe 10 pallets of inventory. So we have to get new pallets. We have to palletize differently. So yeah, they're wising up.
Yeah. It's really interesting because they had this promise initially of we'll make it easy. We're justifying our 15% or our fees because we are doing a lot of this work for you, and you're able to have this Prime badge because you work with us. And now they're moving toward this idea of no, no, you do the hard work yourself, and we'll still fill it out. At the same time that they're talking about doing more with AWD and Amazon Logistics and stuff like that. So talk to me about that. Like, what is going on here? It seems that they want to own everything from right after the factory to the end doorstep. What's the strategy here?
This is Tyler's un-Amazon sponsored opinion on what they're doing here. It reminds me a lot of what they did with Amazon advertising, which started as a very simple, and I'll try and do the comparisons that I talk about it. Amazon advertising started as a very basic in-search sponsored product, basic keyword-based targeting platform. I'll compare that to early days FBAs. You ship us your stuff, we'll store it, and we'll ship it to the customer when the order comes in. Great. Makes a lot of sense. However, Amazon realized, wait, there's more that we can grab here on both the fulfillment and advertising side. Amazon says, wait, we could probably expand to channels off Amazon. We could advertise on other normal programmatic ad sites. So they do this through Amazon's DSP or Amazon Demand Side Platform. They want to move further up the sales funnel by expanding their service offering, all in the guise of a better customer experience. Conveniently also makes them more money. So same thing on the fulfillment side. Hey, we can do this basic FBA model, but there's all this other stuff happening up the supply chain funnel that we're not touching that we could do and get our hands on and admittedly improve their operations by having more control. So they're moving up the supply chain by offering these additional services, Amazon warehouse and distribution, global logistics. So to me, it seems a pretty similar copy from what they're doing on the marketing side. On the advertising ads platform, they're just now applying it to the supply chain model.
Interesting. Can you just walk us through what is AWD and what is global logistics? Because these are relatively new terms, and they made a big splash about them a year ago, and then I think they've pulled it back a little bit, but they're still there, and you have to know who to ask for them.
Yeah, Amazon warehouse. So one of the biggest, I'll talk about the problems and how Amazon solved them. One of the big issues that sellers have typically had, or anybody selling on Amazon, is all the inventory that you have sitting in their fulfillment centers. Very expensive to get out, but in some cases, brands take the decision of rather overstock than understock. Storage fees are less than lost revenue. Amazon warehousing and delivery, among other things, is a great place to be a fulfillment option to Amazon FBA. So what I will compare that to is what brands have historically done is they'll work with a 3PL partner in the US that charges lower storage fees. There's more access to their inventory before they send it to a relatively locked up Amazon FBA. So AWD is a way for Amazon to get into that market. It also, they have some value add to it where they can automate replenishments from this more bulk storage AWD facility to the normal Amazon FBA facilities. So they have some perks, but AWD moves slightly up that food chain. The global logistics is, again, Amazon saw an opportunity. There's all this money being made in shipping containers from China to the US and other international manufacturers to the US. They saw an opportunity to be that person. Obviously, again, value add there. It's all in the same general Amazon network. Things are tracked easier. You do, in some cases, get economies of scale and can save money as opposed to kind of piecemealing with different vendors and crossing your fingers and praying that everybody talks together and things don't break. But Amazon has done this, and I'm not saying just in a purely capitalistic way. It actually has a lot of value, but puts it all into one ecosystem where you can say, hey, factory, just give it to Amazon. Amazon Global Logistics gets it to the US through customs. They hand it off to an AWD facility. It stays there. Then it can go to an FBA facility. It's really, really smooth.
Yeah. I think my favorite tangent that ties into this is you've seen the Prime trucks, the semi trucks on the road. Do you know
Oh,
how
yeah.
you got those, all the trailers here?
Oh,
So they're 53-foot trucks, and they basically contracted a yard in China to make 53-foot containers, and they put these giant bars on them so that the crane could pick them up and move them. And so what they did is they loaded those 53-foot trailers up with stuff they needed, imported them, put them on a truck, sent them over, and then cut off the bars because they knew they never needed containers again. And that's how they got most of their 53-foot trucks.
that is incredible. That is like balling on a budget with a $1 trillion company. I love that. That's so scrappy.
Yeah, it pretty ingenious. I'm sure they didn't do that for all of them, but there was a large portion that were like, well, yeah, we need containers. Let's just buy new ones and we'll use them over here for trucks. And there we go.
Yep. Conveniently, we also need trailers over here. So why don't we kill two
Yeah,
birds with one stone?
growth solves all things. Coming back, so you did a good job of laying out global logistics and AWD. Do you find that it is economical for a brand to have that entire ecosystem, or is it something where it's either the performance is bad or it's just not as cost effective as having your own forwarder or working with another third party for instead of AWD?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've got a little bit of bias being a 3PL, but I'm also very pro Amazon. I will say, if things work as they should in theory, it's a great offering for larger sellers. Going back to like Amazon, talking about the needs and the nuances of prepping your product, that's all for a very specific requirement to make the process with this whole Amazon supply chain as smooth and as ideally as cheap as possible for both Amazon and the brand. However, that's easier said than done. And there's also this whole tranche of small and medium sellers where maybe they're not shipping multiple containers of the same product on single SKU pallets that need to be moved very quickly, seamlessly into the Amazon fulfillment network. Maybe they have a need to split a container between Amazon FBA. Some of it needs to be kitted. Some of it needs to go to a distributor like UNFI or KeHE, and some of it needs to be reserved for their own website orders or like an in-store shop. Um, so for a very large, consistent operation, Amazon supply chain is a really, really good competitive option. But there are things outside. The big one that I talk about, because at Pivot Logistics, we specialize in a lot of value add services, kitting, bundling, prep, things of that nature. Amazon's global supply chain, from global logistics to AWD to FBA, whatever, is not particularly customizable. I will say that is one of the biggest weaknesses that I will say of this offering, especially in a world where customers demand the world and everything outside of it. Brands have to be able to adapt and be customizable and unique to the customer as much as they can be. And just by nature of the beast, a Amazon supply chain by itself is not particularly accommodating for that. So I always suggest maybe you use that, but have a third party as a backup, have a potential 3PL partner to help with some high custom things that need to have. So basically just have redundancies and have backups for different options.
Yeah. It reminds me of a conversation I was having with a CEO years ago. And they were like, well, we're growing, we're scaling, we want to get into the US. Let's just put everything on Amazon. We'll just have Amazon run our whole supply chain. They're very good at supply chain. And you start asking questions like, do you want someone to answer the phone when you have a problem? Do you want to be able to go see your inventory? Do you want to be able to like change things? And they're like, well, yes, of course. I'm like, then don't go to Amazon. Because
Yep.
it's like what you're saying, that they've got a very well-oiled machine and a cog, and you fit inside that machine. The machine does not change to support your business.
No.
Otherwise, you're just going to pay through the nose on it.
Yeah. I may get some flack from Amazon, but I mean, shoot, I gotta make a hot take every now and again. I will say, even to brands they talk to, we're like, yeah, we'll do all this custom stuff, we'll do this and this and this and this. Think about the things that they would need to implement on the scale that they're at to fit you. And even if you're a brand doing 50 million a year, 100 million a year on Amazon, in the grand scheme of things, that's a rounding error. Like that's immaterial to Amazon's P&L. So they may do it for some case study things, they may do it for some press. Um, but you will always be a small fish in a big pond at Amazon. I would say, unless you are the sub 1% of sellers on Amazon. So the 99% plus, know that you're going to be a small fish. They may give you some perks and things then, but you will not forever have that. So try and make yourself a big fish in somebody else's small pond. Have another option, have another third party partner, have somebody that can be more flexible. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. And so I'd love to kind of switch the conversation over to Pivot a little bit. I mean, do you have any examples that come to mind about uh, brands that you've helped who were struggling with FBA before that you were able to kind of take them to another level that they didn't expect?
Yeah. One of my favorite stories, it's a brand and company and a group of people very near and dear to me. Lumi Deodorant was a brand that we worked with, very exciting company. Started with them in 2020. Great time. Start with a brand cheese. Um, when we started with them, we didn't do any other fulfillment. We were purely managing their Amazon channel. But part of what we do on that front is we advise their fulfillment partners, help with inventory forecasting, things like that. And we saw an opportunity to improve how they were sending to Amazon, to mature basically how they were doing things. They were sending basically everything as singles, maybe some loose kitting, but it was honestly, it was probably just sticks of deodorant chucked in a poly bag and sent in. Cool, it's technically bundled. Um, Over the next couple of years, we started taking over more and more of their Amazon kitting and fulfillment and prep, to the point where at one point we were doing all of their Amazon logistics. And part of that, what we did was because of the very nuanced, deep knowledge that we had of the Amazon channel, we were able to advise them on, hey, instead of just doing a 2-pack of deodorant thrown in a poly bag, let's actually reduce the footprint of that by just doing a shrink sleeve with a little barcode on the side so it's still scannable. But now your footprint of that product is actually saving you 20, 30 cents on an FBA fee because when they do a Cubiscan of 2 sticks of deodorant in a poly bag that's probably admittedly oversized because it's just whatever the company had on hand at the time, you are now saving 20, 30 cents per unit shipped. Also, not to mention, now you can double your category by doing 2-packs. We were able to do this with some of their other like sampler packs where we'll say, hey, instead of doing all these full size sticks, can we do a shrunk down option so you can increase your AOV, you can reduce your footprint, and Amazon's fulfillment fees are different from typical 3PL fees where it's just a fixed cost regardless of shipping distance or the number of items in that total order. It's a fixed fee per unit. So we were able to say instead of paying a a fee for 5 separate units in the order, bundle them together, shrink it down a little bit, add a little markup, and now you have. And anyway, so all these different bundling and variety packs ended up being a huge part of the revenue. Um, but when we're talking about big tentpole events as well, Amazon Prime Day in the summer, certainly Black Friday, Cyber Monday in the fall, but all these different Amazon shopping events, Amazon has very specific shipping deadlines. So being able to receive inventory quickly, kit it in the same facility, turn it around, knowing that you're hitting Amazon's inbound routing guides and pump it out very quickly before all these deadlines, was a huge win for them.
That's awesome. Well, we're coming up on our time. We are going to have you back because we did not touch on nearly any, most of the stuff we were
Sorry,
going.
I'm a chatty Cathy.
No, this was good. I loved the takes on Temu and Amazon and where it's going. If people want to learn more about Pitted Logistics or connect with you, what's the right way for them to do that?
Yeah, pittedlogistics.com. It's our website. It's got some cool stuff on there. LinkedIn, Instagram. We've put some funny content out there. Or just connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever. I love talking with brands. Clearly, love giving my 2 cents. So hit me up wherever you find me.
Awesome. And I think you guys are on Slotted here soon too, so we'll make sure your profiles.
Yes, and absolutely find us unslotted.
Awesome. Well, Tyler, thank you so much. We'll do this again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron.